Reducing our global carbon emissions is the only way that we can prevent the predicted harsher elements of climate change from becoming a reality. What is needed is nothing less than an energy revolution. There must be a balance between economic development and environmental sustainability, decoupling growth from the burning of fossil fuels and setting and committing to emission targets must be an international effort.
There needs to be a change in mindset as to how we use the planet. Do we always need to have economic growth at 3% a year? It's not sustainable.
We're looking at climate safety or operating within a safe climate. It's something that's been defined within the science at around 350 ppm CO2. If we are wanting to get to a safe climate, we would need to aim at 350. Right now we're looking at a level of around 392 ppm off Mauna Loa, which is our longest record of CO2. So we're well above it already, and we're shifting rapidly beyond that point to what could actually be described as the great unknown.
Based on the current predictions from up-to-date scientific research, carbon dioxide concentrations will be dangerously high by the end of this century. A carbon dioxide concentration of 900 parts per million will translate to an average global temperature increase of 6 degrees Celsius. This is a real possibility within the lifetime of our children. This is greater than the IPCC's worst-case scenario and is unsustainable environmentally, socially and economically.
There are 4 separate challenges that we've got. We've got food security, water security, energy security and climate change. And each one of those factors interact, and if you change one or you impact upon one, that has an impact right throughout the system. The further that temperature goes up, the greater the amount of damage that will be caused over time. And once it goes up, it's very hard to actually bring it back down.
Some of our recent research is modelling how climate change is going to affect reefs into the future. And so we ask questions like, what happens if we do something aggressive about climate change now, and at the same time we do something aggressive about doing a better job of managing the local environment? What we find is if we do both of those things, then reefs of the future can look a little bit like reefs that we have today and the reefs that we're familiar with. They won't be quite the same, but they'll still serve very useful functions, and they'll try and keep up with sea level. If, on the other hand, it's just business as usual, then we are looking at a very different sort of future. We're looking at a future where there will be fewer corals, a lot more seaweed on these reefs, there'll be fewer fish. Many of the small, really brightly coloured fish that we know and love won't be as common, and some of them may actually go extinct.
Every journey starts out with the first step, and I think with the local stressors, for example, things like overharvesting, overfishing, it's easy to place restrictions on fishing, especially when education programs accompany those restrictions that show that actually restricting fishing in the short term is going to produce benefits in the long term. People are more than willing to alter their practices as long as they can maintain what they've been doing. And I think there's a lot of inefficiencies in things like farming and development projects and things like that adjacent to the seas, where we can really gain a lot and make some big differences in what's happening.
There's never going to be a silver bullet for this. It's not just one thing. Instead of having this problem where you've got to reduce your emissions by this much, and you look at it all in one lot, what you actually do is you subdivide each section, and you say, we'll take 1 gigatonne of carbon will be devoted to improved efficiencies within buildings. We could actually improve our efficiency in motor vehicles, so that could be another gigatonne. We look at the total amount and it's broken down into these various wedges, and those wedges define our activities.
Mitigation, the application of policies and technologies that reduce carbon emissions, is one of 2 forms of action needed to tackle the problem. The other is adaptation, something that we must also start now. With both, we must move ahead cooperatively as a global community with binding international agreements that encompass every major country and region to achieve the target necessary to avoid dangerous climate change. It does, after all, present threats that will impact everyone on the planet if we continue on the path that we're on now. However, as public pressure on policy change has proven in the past, with the right mix of legislation, laws, and policy incentives, large-scale change can happen.